So Israel is a huge one. Israel-Palestine speech critical of Israel, and they're just using basically every facet of government that they can come up with. So withholding funds from universities through HHS if they don't tamp down enough on anti-Semitic speech. And of course, as anyone who's been paying attention to this issue knows, anti-Semitic means anti-Israel speech. Just not to say there's no anti-Semitism, but for the most part, most of what they're doing is kicking people out of school, expelling them, and deporting them for, criticizing Israel and the genocide in Gaza, or saying other negative things about Israel being an apartheid state or that kind of thing. So that's their big one, and it's very brazen. But recently, of course, they've been over the last couple of days, there's been a massive effort to censor anybody who says anything negative about Charlie Kirk or celebrates his death. And to be clear, like, I don't celebrate his death. I disagreed with him on probably 90% of the things he said, but I don't want people to die. I don't think that's the right way. I appreciate his defense of free speech. Actually, he gave platforms to people he disagreed with and said, speech is not violence, violence is violence. So I don't approve of that. But on the other hand, you should be able to say what you want on social media without fearing the government coming after you. And then there's been a massive sort of cancel culture effort, getting people fired for what they said about him. And even people there was a teacher she was singled out, and her speech to her class was recorded, and she had said, I don't like a lot of what Charlie Kirk said. I find it offensive, but he didn't deserve to die. She was specifically eschewing violence and saying this is not the way. And they're still coming after her because she didn't say the right things about Charlie Kirk, which is crazy.
It is insane. That's the thing that's been the culture around it. And I think that's one of the biggest issues around free speech. You could take every case to court, right? You could do all of this. But it's almost like we have to have a fundamental shift in culture in order for Americans to remember that, hello, we are a country for free speech. And what does free speech actually mean? I remember being a kid growing up in Idaho, and in northern Idaho, there was always this neo-Nazi camp, and they would have these Nazi parades every year. And I remember being a kid in school, and in school, all of us kids learning about this, like seeing it in the news, and we'd come to school and we'd all be shocked, like, what in the world? There's like a Nazi camp up there and they're allowed to have a parade. And all of our teachers and all of the adults, like everybody just collectively would say, well, we don't have to like it, but they're allowed because that's free speech. And you know what? Nobody will show up, and, it's just no one supports it, and that's it. But I was taught from a young age of, we don't have to like it, but they're allowed to do it, because otherwise it'll come back and bite you in the ass, in the future. And it's like, where did that sentiment go? Now it's just, okay, I'm going to cancel. But it's a cultural issue. So even if you can't take it to court, because you can't really take to court the cancel culture, right?
Right.
The mob coming after people and getting them fired. And you can't really take that to court, but that's like, we've got a cultural problem right now.
Yes. It's funny. I actually just said this to a journalist, like a lot, because he was asking about this sort of attempt to get private employers to fire people for celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder or being too not upset about it or whatever. And I said the exact same thing. I mean, private employers, if they're not being forced by the state, they have a lot of discretion. But from sort of a policy perspective or a principles perspective, I think we should be arguing against this. Because, and people have to remember, now the right is doing it. When the left was in power, they were doing it, and it's going to go back. So the exact same, and it's the same people who claim to be against cancel culture on the right are now.
And then they say, but this is different, Janine. Don't you know this is different? This is different.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they always say. Yeah, and it's it's really a problem. And I think one of the things that's going on is it's much harder to tolerate it when we have social media. Like before social media, you didn't really know what the woman at Walmart thought about Trump or Charlie Kirk or Palestine. Now we kind of know what everybody thinks. And I think people have to learn to be more tolerant, because the views people express on social media can be very sharp. And they can be hard to hear sometimes. I have to hear things about Palestinians that make me cringe all the time and make me kind of upset, but I just, this is part of life. So I think there's a temptation because of social media and the way that people can sort of express themselves very openly. But we have to sort of continue to embrace free speech, even with the technology we have.
Yeah. And I don't mind an employer, when people talk about, well, if a private employer doesn't like what you say, they have the right to fire you. And I agree that absolutely an employer should be allowed to do that. But I think the issue I have is the mob. It's if it's organic, like if somebody says something and all of the customers find out somehow, not through a mob, but just organically find out, and then they demand that the business, like, hey, you have this person working for you. I guess that's to me fair enough. But what I'm seeing online is like a lynch mob, right? They're like
Yeah,
literally hunting and targeting people and
yeah.
trying to ruin their lives. It's not an organic, people just, it's not organic at all.
Right. And I mean, one thing, I don't think there's necessarily very clear lines, like it can get a little fuzzy. I mean, if you're a teacher and you say, I don't think black kids are as smart as white kids on social media. I mean, I can understand, okay, you can't be a teacher, certainly not at our
Right.
school. Like that conflicts
Right.
directly with like sort of extremely important principles. And also when it comes to children, I think like, so teachers of school children, I think we all have higher standards. But I mean, people need to be a little bit smart about drawing these lines. So I think one way of putting it is if what you're doing directly conflicts with your ability to do your job, and of course there's a lot of room for interpretation there, and the censorship people will stretch that very, stretch that very tight. But then I understand, okay, the employer has some latitude to do that without it being sort of abusive or problematic. But for the most part, I don't think most people's jobs, it really matters what they think about Charlie Kirk.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's strange times that we're. I mean, it's really been. It's been really hard not to hate everybody this week.
Yeah, I just hate
Like,
most people most of the time.
I mean, that this week I really, just the right going crazy and acting exactly like the left
Yeah,
and saying, but this is different. And they don't realize that, the left during COVID, they really believed those of us that were for freedom were killing people. I mean, they really,
yeah,
really believed that in their heart. They
yeah,
genuinely thought we were killing grandma, right?
yeah.
So
They
to
still do.
them, it was an existential crisis that needed to be clamped down on. And we fought against that. So it isn't different. It's like,
No, and I mean, this is very similar to what you're saying, but like a lot of people genuinely thought if you didn't get the vaccine, you were willingly spreading the virus to vulnerable people, and therefore
right.
you were causing violence. That's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But it's, okay. So what do we do? I mean, as regular people, seeing all this censorship, and I'm pretty frightened. I mean, right now you've got Trump promoting, and a lot of people on the right promoting that they want to censor journalism. They want to censor, and this was no different than what happened during COVID, wanting to censor and silence many of us, and many of us were successfully silenced and censored or shadow banned or whatever. And now I'm seeing that push, even Trump retweeting a video calling for the basically holding journalists accountable. It's like, where have I heard that exact phrase before? Come from the left, right? I mean, what can we even do?
Well, I mean, that's why I do what I do, is to keep sort of fighting in court for free speech, and also talking about it. I mean, like talking with people like you and sort of helping people to understand these ideas that I think a lot of people just haven't thought about that much before. Like we all have the temptation to silence speech that upsets us, right? That's like kind of natural. I see people like Randy Fine saying things like, may the streets of Gaza run with the blood of children or whatever. I don't like that. That upsets me. Then there's a temptation to be like, he should be censored for this, or he should be. I mean, I actually don't think that, because I'm glad that people can say what they think and then we know how heinous they are. But
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
really emphasizing the importance of dialogue and debate as the means of convincing people rather than silencing them. And that, like, silencing people isn't actually very effective. What happens is they just go underground, they get more extreme. And, like Charlie Kirk's actually a good example. He had been extremely pro-Israel. We know that he was having some doubts recently about his positions because of free speech.